Each week, nearly a dozen movies are released theatrically. 40 films a month, more than 400 a year. That's a plethora of cinema. Too much cinema. You'd have to be an addict to see all that, but don't fret. We've got you covered. This is CinemAddicts.
Hey everyone, what's up? It's a new week of CinemAddicts. This is the week covering Friday, May 9th, 2025. We have movies that are coming out on Friday, May 9th, 2025. This is CinemAddicts episode 293. The movies we're covering this week include The Moogai, Unit 234, Absolute Dominion, Henry Johnson, and I Know Catherine, the Log Lady. Bruce Purkey will have reviews of Henry Johnson, I Know Catherine, the Log Lady, and The Moogai, so tune into that shortly for the Cinem-Attic. And yes, I am continuing to actually pretend I have this kind of voice just because to make it, I don't want to sound like this. Eric Holmes, I don't want to sound like this. How are you, Eric Holmes? How's your week been of working, steaks? You also have, you do a lounge, you do the lounge, you do the steaks, you do the karaoke. Aren't you tired by now?
Not too bad. I'm a little tired because I just woke up. But actually karaoke last night was just, karaoke in general is real fun, but this week was particularly fun.
What made it memorable for you this week in karaoke?
So I went up to Victor because I work up at Victor, Colorado, 1899 Mining Claim Tavern. I work there every other week, and this week I went up and I pulled up, and he's the bartender guy that works there. Right. Sean's awesome. But he hit me up, but I didn't get the message, so I got there, and all the power went out. So I was like, oh no, what's going to happen? No karaoke today. But I came back on, and I started off slow because a bunch of the people that normally show up didn't think they were going to be open. And then the power came back on, so we set up, and then people started coming in. And it started off slow, but it ended awesome. And then last night, I worked at Toki here in Colorado Springs, also an awesome place. And that was a little more laid back. I think probably because the weather wasn't great. A lot of people didn't show up, but the people they did. When the shows are not that busy, we just usually call it band practice.
Oh, nice.
Usually get a couple, like 3 or 4 people, the same 3 or 4 people keep up and go. And it's, instead of playing to the crowd, you're kind of like, you know what? I haven't done this song before. We'll go ahead and give it a shot because everyone's in the same sort of mindset. And yeah, it was real fun.
What's the song?
It was fun band practice, Les.
Okay, barring band practice, when it's very crowded and someone requests a song or you have to play a song to play to the crowd, what song do you really hate to play and you are just absolutely sick and tired of with all your...
Do I hate to play or
that you're just tired of just playing it? Or is there any song that you're tired of playing over just...
Not
Are
really.
you good?
No, because the thing is, like, I'm not sitting there passively listening to a song. I'm watching the other person enjoy singing the song.
Oh,
and then the other
fair.
people, like the energy, like when someone gets up and sings and they're real nervous because it's their first time, and they start singing, and then the crowd like are really encouraging towards them.
Right.
Then you start seeing that light in their eye brighten a little bit, and that's a real fun moment to watch. And going from, I've never done karaoke, I'm so nervous, I'm not going to be that good, and then the crowd's encouraging, and then you see their confidence build, and it's, oh, this is awesome. We got another karaoke fan being born right now.
Have there been ringers when people say, oh, I can't sing, and they actually sound just absolutely like professional singers? Are there some ringers? And is that annoying when they say, I pretend?
I would say that's most people.
No way. Okay.
Yeah, because most people are like, I'm not, everyone compares themselves to someone like Mariah Carey.
Right.
Or Adele.
Yes.
They're like, oh, I'm not that good. And then they get up and it's like, dude, the biggest time people struggle is when they have no confidence and they're holding back. But then once their confidence builds up, most people are pretty good at singing. They're not like on the level like Mariah Carey or Adele or Ariana Grande or something like that. But they have their own voice, and their own voice shines in a way that they probably don't suspect that it does.
That's very nice. And this is an easy transition. Do you think most people are good singers, even if they're nervous? They just have to really reach that potential and break down those nervous doors. But sometimes I think with the 3, 4, 5 years we've been doing this together, me, you, and Bruce, I think most of the movies we watch, they have some good elements to it, right? They're not all terrible. I think most of them are good. Can we actually say that there is an equality. Most people are decent singers. Most movies are decent movies. Can you agree on that, Eric?
Yeah, even Nazi propaganda still has good, at least it's in focus.
Yeah, it's directed by Leni Riefenstahl. Yeah.
So that's something you can say about it.
So
probably not the greatest idea to compare karaoke singers to not propaganda filmmakers.
Right. Leni Riefenstahl is celebrated, I guess. So,
but yeah, even even the few people that like can't sing or can't hold the note, if they're on stage and they're having fun, that's sometimes just as entertaining. Not even just laughing at them, but just laughing at someone's not even fun, not for me anyway. But watching how much they're enjoying themselves, that kind of energy transfers out. I guess it'd be kind of like if you watch a movie, and this movie's not good, but you can tell they had fun on set, so it gives you that little extra charge that you wouldn't have otherwise.
Eric was mentioning the light behind people's eyes. Unfortunately, I'm looking at Eric right now. He just woke up. He woke up not because he's not doing a good job in the podcast. He woke up because 2 hours earlier, I have an appointment with the eye doctor, and he was able to move around his busy schedule. So thank you, Eric, for that. You're ruining your sleep for this podcast, and I do appreciate that. But there's also...
Let's get back to his fine.
Okay, we're going to get... Look, I haven't listened to Bruce Purkey's reviews. He has 40 minutes worth of podcast time in here. So you and I, we can vamp and we can just pretend we saw movies for about 2 minutes and then just
40,
cut to Bruce Purkey.
We've been on for 20. All right, that's the show.
Yeah, so I was going to also say there might be no... If you're watching us on YouTube, whether it's our Deepest Dream YouTube channel or our CinemAddicts YouTube channel, please subscribe to both channels. That's where we house a lot of our, or all of our CinemAddicts movie reviews and interviews as well. Eric and I do interviews as well, but there is going to be a few, maybe not too much light behind Eric's eyes, because this week he came face to face. He liked the people at the karaoke joint, at the lounge. He's doing fine with that. But when it came to movies, it was a slight disappointment. And I see his hope, and the light is dimming. The color from your face is draining. We're going to drain everything from your face right now, Eric Holmes, as we are going to start with our first movie of the week. It's called Absolute Dominion. It's directed and written by Lexi Alexander. It stars June Zadi, Alex Winter, Andy Allo, who, by the way, if you remember, Eric, you interviewed Andy Allo several years ago, and Patton Oswalt. Set in the year 2060 or 2063 AD, and the world is under some catastrophic situation as zealots and extremists are waging a global holy war. The only way to save it is possibly this radical new form of diplomacy called the Battle of Absolute Dominion. Hence the movie title, Absolute Dominion. Again, it is written and directed by Lexi Alexander. I think Eric was a fan of Alexander's previous movie. I think, and Eric will correct me, she did one of
Hooligans and Punisher Warzone.
Okay, Green Street. Thank you, Eric. I really enjoyed Green Street Hooligans, and I enjoyed, what is it, Punisher
Warzone.
Punisher.
That was a good one with
I forgot
Ray Stevenson. He just died not too long ago.
Passed away. He was so good in that one too. So those are two good movies.
Yeah. The movie was like way over the top, but it's like way over the top and violent in a way that you want for a Punisher. And it was a lot more like the TV show with John Bernthal. That one takes a little more serious. Punisher Warzone's, we're going to be over the top. We're going to be violent, but it's going to be fun as hell. But yeah, absolutely love Punisher Warzone.
Okay, so you were excited going to Absolute Dominion. What did this movie possibly, per your initial reaction, get right or wrong? What is your review of Absolute Dominion, Eric?
So I guess just to set it off, Absolute Dominion is in like a near future kind of scenario, and it's kind of hard to describe, but it's like the world is like not a one government, but kind of like a one government kind of world sort of thing, instead of like those different countries and stuff. But Patton Oswalt is like a YouTuber sort of thing, and he mentions that they should get every religion to pick a fighter and then do like a Mortal Kombat style tournament. And the winner of that tournament is the religion that the whole world will take to, which right away you can see some problems with that.
Sure.
Hey, Greg, you're a Catholic.
Yes, I am.
So and I'm an atheist. So if my fighter and your fighter were duking it out just because one of them wins, Am I all of a sudden going to become Catholic? Are you all of a sudden going to become atheist? Probably
Right.
not.
Probably not. Okay.
Because the whole point of religion and your beliefs is that you believe it. So to say that, oh, a fighter did a thing and, yeah, it's fine. We lost fair and square. Oh no, the Jewish team won. No pulled pork tonight. No more bait. So right away, the premise is absurd, but maybe get like a Mortal Kombat, we get like a fighting tournament kind of movie. Maybe that could be good.
Yeah.
I would say, so the fighting tournament is sterile.
Ooh.
Because it looks kind of like us. It looks kind of like it does in the Karate Kid. Then the Karate Kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would think like a tournament would be like this big grand thing with people everywhere, but it's in a sparring room and not many people, and
It's not exciting to look at all.
it doesn't look like a tournament. It looks like you're practicing for the tournament.
In a conference room or something. Conference.
Not really a conference room, but it looks pretty dead. And there's a ton of exposition, and a lot of the exposition goes towards that absurd premise I mentioned earlier. Try to take it seriously and try to make a commentary on just religion in general. But I think they have a fundamental misunderstanding on almost everything that they're commenting on. So like, they clearly don't understand religion. They clearly don't understand how different religions work. And they absolutely don't understand how atheism works, because the main character he's fighting for the humanists, which is essentially atheist. He's fighting for the humanists, and he's like a scientifically engineered fighter. So like, he can't lose. That's like the whole thing.
What is it exciting to look at? Is it the fights? How are the fights? If it's
The fights are the choreography of the fights are done well, really well in some aspects. Fights are fun to watch at times, but it's just the premise is so absurd and the commentary is misinformed and kind of stupid most of the time. And here's the thing, an atheist isn't going to find God halfway through a fight.
right.
It does that thing. And so when it goes there, I'm like, oh, okay, this is why this. I don't know what Alexi Alexander is, because she wrote this as well. I don't know what her religious affiliation is. I don't know that she understands how atheists work, because atheists we don't believe in God because there's no evidence for it. Or all the religions we come across seem absurd. There's just no good reason to believe in it, so you don't believe in it. You don't go halfway through a fighting tournament and go, oh, I believe in God all of a sudden. It's like, I don't know. And movies do this all the. I would say this is like on the level of, imagine watching a movie where someone's trans, and then just all of a sudden on a whim, they're like, you know what? I don't think I'm trans anymore. Maybe I want to go back to it. Look, I'm not trans. Maybe I'm completely wrong about this, but these are like inherent beliefs. These are stuff that people feel inside themselves. So they don't just change these things on a whim. And when movies do that, it's almost actually offensive that a character would just be that flippant about something that they hold so true.
What about it just as to watch the movie on an entertainment level? Is it entertaining? Is this really interesting? Is it?
No, because there's like a ton of exposition, like a lot of exposition, and all the exposition is dumb and uninformed. And the thing is, like, you had Swinner and Patton Oswalt, and those are like, and Alex Swinner, like, you've seen his documentaries. He's like pretty smart dude, like pretty well informed about a bunch of things. I know Patton Oswalt obviously is. My guess is that they were fans of Alexi Alexander like I am, and then they just said yes before they read the screenplay. I cannot imagine anyone read the screenplay and go, yep, looks good to me. Let's do this.
That is tough.
Because this thing is just very half-baked. And yeah, I've already said, this movie's stupid, and not in a good way. It's stupid in that, really? You didn't think this through, like, at all? That there should have been someone to read the script and go, hey, Lexi, yeah, let's go through this entire thing again. Just to read it. Like, maybe not, okay, this fight's cool, that fight's cool. That line was pretty good. Oh, wait, no, that line is referring to that, not that. So, yeah, that line's stupid. Take that out.
That's very bad.
This whole thing is just misguided, misinformed, and the stuff it's commenting on is, yeah,
All right.
It'd be like me commenting on pouring cement.
Okay. So that
I
is
don't know nothing about pouring cement. I don't know what I would comment on.
Absolute Dominion in theaters and digital May 9th. Eric Holmes is saying, go rent this, purchase this on Amazon.
I am absolutely not saying that.
May 9th. What is your rating, Eric Holmes, on?
My rating is Go See Punisher Warzone and Green Street Hooligans.
And 0, 1 star, 2
I'm
stars?
not gonna give it 0.
0. Wow.
I will give it a star because some of the fights are cool. Oh, that's another thing. I think the budget. I don't know what the budget was on IMDb. I think it said something like 13 million. So maybe that's accurate. Maybe it's not.
What?
But you know what? If Absolute Dominion can talk about things it doesn't know anything about, so can I. Budget's $13 million. The effects in this look like they spent about $12 on it. I literally could do these effects in my house over a week by myself.
Unbelievable. Very disappointing, especially since
this is someone going up to sing at karaoke, and not only are they not good, they're not even going to try, and they have nothing but contempt for karaoke.
Oh, that is so tough. And I was listening to a podcast, I forgot which, and someone was referencing Lexi Alexander and how big of a fan she is of Walter Hill. So hard to really give a bad.
I mean, she's got, look, this is nothing against, I guess it is against Lexi Alexander. She wrote and directed this, but I love her movies. This is not a good one. This one's like absolutely just, it was depressing watching this.
Oh, I'm sorry, Eric.
Because I was so excited to watch a new Lexi Alexander movie, and then this comes out, and I'm like, what the hell? No.
Oh, no.
Oh.
If any of you out there, any fellow cinematics out there, if you just have the bravery or you trip across this movie and you actually like it or whatnot, just tell us what you think of Absolute Dominion if you ever get to watch this movie. Again, written and directed by Lexi Alexander. Next up.
I would say Patton Oswalt, this winner. Please read the script before you say yes.
Oh my gosh. All right, here's the good news. I actually saw a movie that might be good. And spoiler alert, I'm not going to say very good, but it's solid good to the point of I'm going to recommend this movie. This film is called Unit 234 or Unit 234. Eric Holmes, when you look at that title, should I call it Unit 234 or Unit 234? What would you say? Because 234 is a number. It's numerical. So
I'll go 234.
Okay, so Unit 234. Thank you, Eric Holmes. Here is a plot. Isabel Fuhrman, you might know her from those orphan movies. I love those orphan movies that she was in, and she's been in other movies. I forgot the name of the other movie that she did a couple of years ago that I really loved when she's a rower. She's like a rower. You interviewed a bunch of the people from Shiro's, but she was in another movie before that where she is a rower, and that was just a fantastic film. Anyways, this movie is directed by Andy Tennant. It's written by Derek Steiner. Co-stars, along with Furman, include Don Johnson and Jack Huston. Jack Huston, you might know him as just for his work in Boardwalk Empire. He recently, last year, made his feature directing debut in a really interesting boxing drama called Day of the Fight. By the way, Eric Holmes, I think you would like that movie, Day of the Fight. But as far as this movie, Unit 234, it centers on a group of criminals. They come to collect the contents of a storage unit. The head of these criminals is Don Johnson. They're looking for this specific unit because this is not a spoiler. This is the first act of the movie. Inside this unit is a man who is half naked. He is in a hospital, not a hospital chair, but he's a hospital table. What operating table? He's on an operating table, and the side of his body, there is a bandage at the side of his body. And it's, what is he doing in this storage facility? The storage facility is run by this woman, played by Isabel Fuhrman. She actually has a house on the premises as well. This is her lifeblood running this storage facility. And when she comes across this unit with that man, she is wondering what the heck is going on. This guy's life is in danger. That man is in that hospital operating table, is played by Jack Huston. He is escaping the clutches of Don Johnson and his fellow criminal flock. And what happens is the rest of the narrative is Jack Huston and Isabel Fuhrman's characters, they try to escape these criminals all within the storage facility. Not because if they get found, who knows, they all might get killed. Unit 234, Unit 234, however you want to say it, it's in theaters and digital, or theaters and on demand May 9th. Are you Eric Holmes, you're a huge Don Johnson fan. I'm sure if you see Don Johnson action thriller Lionsgate, you might want to see something like that, right?
Yeah, I like it. And by the way, the movie The Novice. I think that's what you're
Do you
talking
remember
about.
The Novice? Did you see The Novice?
Did
Or
I?
it was just me and Bruce probably saw The Novice. She's so good in that movie, Isabel.
There was the good one, and then there was the one with Michael Shannon. This was the good
Right,
one.
this is a good one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, The Novice. I forgot the other. What was the one with Michael Shannon that we were just?
That one, I know like you and Bruce didn't like, or at least Bruce hated it.
Yeah, the Michael Shannon
thought,
one. Yeah.
I remember thinking it was fine, but it was definitely like kind of a saccharine made for TV movie kind of version of the similar story.
Whereas The Novice is just a first-rate drama / thriller with Isabel Furman. More of a drama than a thriller, but she's great in that. And she's really good in Unit 234. Okay, because she and Jack Houston, they're trying to outwit Don Johnson and his henchmen throughout the rest of the movie. I didn't put the running time here on Unit 234, and it's probably one of those 80 to 84 minute action thrillers. And it's just
it's 4 hours long.
No, it
didn't seem like that apparently.
A really tight, I was gonna say action thriller. There are action elements, but that's not the leading star of this movie. The star of the
1 hour 26 minutes.
Thank you, Eric. It's 86 minutes, so it's a very tight little thriller. And if you want to see these two people try to outwit and against all odds against these criminals, Unit 234 is worth a watch. I'm gonna say for most of the movie, you're thinking, okay, this is not this is a 3.5 star type of solid thing that I would recommend. But then there's something that happens in the third act, which I really appreciated, and it bumped up Unit 234 a slight notch. So I'm giving Unit 234 4 stars. I'm not going to say what bumped it up because it's worth it. It's one of those things where I wouldn't mind watching this again. It's in theaters and on demand May 9th. Unit 234 ended up being a really solid movie for me to watch. Isabel Furman, as always, is very good in this movie, as is Don Johnson and Jack Houston. Those are the stars of the movie, and I really enjoyed it. I wish you saw this, Eric, but you had to see other movies. And this is one of those movies like every week, each of us can't see a movie or two, and it just gets away from us. And this is one of the things that I think, Eric, you would have given us high marks as well. Again, 4 stars for me for Unit 234. Next up, Eric Holmes, you have a movie written and directed by David Mamet. It stars Evan Jonighet. I don't know how to pronounce that last name. Chris Bauer, Dominic Hoffman, and last but not least is Shia LaBeouf. I was reading some reviews on Henry Johnson, and they were saying this movie split into several acts, and it's just a ton of monologues. Is that correct, Eric Holmes? I think all of us are fans of David Mamet. He's a Pulitzer Prize winner. He directed that awesome, underrated Val Kilmer movie, Spartan. I will always love Spartan.
Red Belt.
Oh my God. Red Belt. So good. Thank you, Eric.
Yes.
Oh, how awesome is Red Belt? I've seen 4 or 5 times. Spartan.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing. I can see that. I've probably seen that movie 3 times just during that era of David Mamet filmmaking, where it was just really hard-nosed, sparse action thriller, but in a Mamet sense. Oh, just Heist. Heist was good too.
Freaking love Heist Family Show.
No, yeah, you freaking love Heist. Yeah, no, you didn't swear. You were fine. With the late Gene Hackman in that, and Delroy Lindo.
Maine. The whole thing.
Well, that happened, right? So a lot of great. A litany of really good David Mamet stuff. Bruce Purkey has his thoughts on Henry Johnson. In a few moments, you're going to listen to it. Eric Holmes, take it away with your review of Henry Johnson.
So this one's kind of a mixed bag for me. I think I mostly like this one though. But yeah, you're basically following Henry Johnson. It opens up with him and what is the guy's name? I cannot remember. Anyway, Chris Bauer. It's him and Chris Bauer talking back and forth. And he's going over someone that Henry knew that was sort of on trial for, I don't know if it was like beating his girlfriend or causing her to have an abortion or forcing her to have an abortion, but there was something going on there. And he was trying to figure out why Henry was helping him out. And he was like, he was a friend. He needed help or whatever. So I tried to do that. And but you're right. This is like basically 3 different monologues and 3 different acts. So the first one is Henry Johnson talking with Chris Bauer. Second one is him talking with Shia LaBeouf. I can't remember his character's name. And then the last one is him talking with the Dominic Hoffman. or them talking to Henry Johnson. But anyway, so Chris Bauer's talking with Henry Johnson, and talking about his friend. And then at the end of the conversation, Chris Bauer mentions that he's going to prosecute Henry Johnson. It's revealed that there was money stolen, laundered, or something to help his friend. And that whole conversation they were having was Chris Bauer's character trying to basically catch Henry Johnson in a lie. It's basically manipulating the whole conversation. Then now Henry Johnson's in prison, monologuing at him, talking to him why he's in prison. And then, of course, the end of that monologue comes up, and then there's another turn, and you find out that Shia LaBeouf's been manipulating him the whole time. And now, if he's at the end with Dominic Hoffman, he's put in a situation, and Dominic Hoffman's monologuing to him, manipulating him the entire time, and then that's the end of the movie. It's basically 3 forms of manipulation, and a lot of the movie, it took me a while to catch on to this movie, because a lot of the conversations, they go off on other tangents.
This feels like a movie that if you like plays,
yeah,
you're going to enjoy this movie. If you do not like monologuing, you're going to absolutely dislike it. Is it that day and night, or is there a lot more gray?
So there's some gray area, and the gray area comes from a lot of the monologuing or even the conversation is they go off on these weird, like, talking circles sometimes and talk about stuff that's irrelevant to what's going on. And so I'm trying to lock on to what they're talking about, but it can't. Okay, I'm lost now. And then they bring up something, I'm like, okay, whatever. And then it's not until the end of the conversation where I realized that, oh, the reason I was getting lost is because they were just bloviating and trying to take over the conversation and trying to lull Henry Johnson, just kind of lull him or feed him a bunch of bull crap until it's time to throw in their, whatever the stuff is they're trying to mess with them. And
that sounds interesting enough, or it could be monotonous, because if you're saying each of them ends in a manipulation, it seems like the same color. I don't know if that's something that I'm going to be into.
It does seem monotonous and does seem pointless and it certainly did to me until I realized what was going on. And then I was like, oh, that's okay. Yeah, that's brilliant. It's kind of like we mentioned a couple times when a character says something stupid and you're not sure if that's bad writing or if that's great writing, but that's just what that character would say in real life.
Yeah.
It's got kind of like that. Cause like a lot of the conversations, this is just noise to me. Like I don't understand like what the point is or what's going on until it starts to make sense. I'm like, oh, okay, all that noise was just obfuscation. The character obfuscating a bunch of stuff or just throwing whatever to the window and see what sticks because the character is trying to do something else. And so it wasn't immediately apparent what was going on, but it was not until later on when I reflected back on it, it was like, okay, I think I see what was going on there.
Does it make it a good movie then? Because it's a slow burn and makes you think and it makes you put the puzzle pieces together, I suppose?
That's just it. It's not like that. It lulls you into a certain state of, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for. Ennui is not exactly it, but something like that. When the characters are talking, it just kind of, when you hear something droning, kind of like what I'm doing now, you kind of zone out and you're like, And then 10 minutes go by and you realize you haven't understood a thing anyone said. It's kind of like that. But when the character's doing that, it's to a point. Okay. And then, and it's good that someone like David Mamet can do that because like he's a good enough writer that you can almost get lost in kind of the music of his dialogue anyway. So it works in that respect.
Well, then that to that point, Eric, is it a movie that might be just, I'm not saying strictly for, but it will appeal to the Mamet enthusiast who, whether he or she might know all of the ins and outs of the Mamet's writing, the inner workings, so they can appreciate it more than the layperson like me, I'm assuming.
Maybe. Possibly like, I don't know do you get this with Shakespeare? Do you hear like a monologues in Shakespeare and your brain just turns off because nothing's sticking in your head? Or is that just me?
Sure. No, that's me being an idiot because there are things in Shakespeare I don't understand. So yeah, it's totally, I agree.
But someone does like a full page monologue
right. Yeah.
In Shakespeare, and you're like, you're just sitting there, you're listening to the cadence of the voice or the music of the dialogue, but none of it's sticking.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm talking about in this.
Okay.
There's that aspect of it. But then there's also a point in it where everything kind of clicks and makes sense. So it's also why it's a mixed bag, because I did ultimately enjoy the story. I enjoyed what it was saying, but there was also a lot of it where I'm just like, this is fun listening to favorite dialogue, and I don't understand what's going on because I'm an idiot. But
Wait, what was that movie? House of Games? Way back in the day, like over 40 years ago. Wasn't that a great
Yeah.
movie? Man, I love that movie so much.
But I will say, also, I guess there's also the issue of Shia LaBeouf in this. People have issues with him. That's like personal stuff. Maybe that's a problem. Maybe that isn't. But he's actually really good in this.
He's just a really good, personal stuff aside, he's just a really good actor.
Yeah.
So
Francis Ford Coppola, he's a good filmmaker. He's also a piece of crap. So
Yeah.
these things happen.
last week,
You're not going to convince me Kevin Spacey's a bad actor.
of course,
You can easily convince me he's not a great person.
one can separate the two. Hopefully one can separate the two.
And if you can't, that's fine.
That's fine
Completely
too.
fair.
That's fine.
But yeah,
What do you-
Henry Johnson is, I think ultimately it ends good. And the ending after the monologue with him and Dominic Hoffman, I think the third act's probably the strongest one, just because the story had progressed to at that point. But yeah, ultimately it's pretty good. Probably not going to be for everyone. And if you're not a fan of David Mamet or haven't really delved into him, I don't think this is going to be the movie that kind of grabs you and pulls you in. But if you're already a fan of David Mamet, it's not a terrible one.
Okay, what is your rating on
I would
Henry Johnson?
at first I'd probably go 3 stars, but that last act probably go a half star above, so probably go 3.5 on this.
Okay, so that's 3.5 stars for Henry Johnson, the latest film from
I
David.
could go 4.5 if I was smarter, but I'm not, so I won't.
So, by the way, I was reading an article. This is David Mamet's first feature directing effort. I think he's done miniseries and TV stuff since then, but it's his first film directing.
It's
film
Red Belt, I think. Or no,
yeah,
he
17
did
years
that.
ago. Yeah, which one?
No, he did that. What was that one? Phil Spector?
Yeah, but that one doesn't count because that's not a film. That's a limited series. But yeah, but he hasn't done a movie in a while, for about 17 years. So it's really good to see him back. And that's Henry Johnson.
Yeah, I would say if you've not delved into David Mamet yet, get Red Belt. Red Belt's start there. And actually start with Glengarry Glen Ross. This is probably a lot closer to Glengarry Glen Ross.
I know what you're saying. I know because, of course, Glengarry Glen Ross is directed by James Foley, not Mamet. It's based on the Mamet play. I know what you're saying because Red Belt is more pure Mamet, just like Spartan is more pure Mamet. These are both written.
But also like Glengarry Glen Ross, a lot of talking, as is this. This is almost exclusively talking because all the actions that lead into the next scene happen off screen.
Okay.
You don't see any of it. You just see the parts where they're sitting there talking. But
all right, so that is Henry Johnson. Finally, our last film this week that we're covering, and then you guys can head over to Cinem-Attic and listen to Bruce Purkey. And I was going to say bloviate. I love that word. No, he's not going to bloviate. He's going to give you some insightful reviews of Catherine, the Log Lady. What?
I forgot his family show. On about that.
Hey, yeah. So listen to Bruce Purkey's review of Henry Johnson, and I know Catherine, the Log Lady, as well as the Moogai shortly. But speaking of the Moogai, Eric and I have a review of the Moogai. Here is the plot summary behind this film. Sarah and Fergus, they are a young Aboriginal couple. Sarah has just given birth to their second baby, and everything seems so fine because she's doing really well at her job. She's currently on maternity leave. She is I'm not going to say the sole breadwinner, but she is the alpha dog in the house when it comes to making money. She is doing she's very successful, but right now she's on maternity leave. And I believe her husband is a contractor or works in carpentry. Her husband, Fergus, played by Maine Wyatt. The lead, Sarah, is played by Sherry Sebens. I will say the one shining star of the Moogai is, in my opinion, Sherry Sebens. She's excellent as Sarah, a woman who is pushing aside her Aboriginal roots because she was raised by a white family. And so that push and pull with the Moogai, because the first act centers on this, it's inspired by historical fact. You have, what is it, Eric? You have these Aboriginal families. A lot of these kids were taken away from a lot of the people in the area. So a lot of Aboriginal kids grew up not with their parents or their culture or their family, and rather sometimes they were adopted into just a different type of family, an Australian family. Okay, that's not Aboriginal.
It's great that you're starting the review off with this because the movie also started off with that and then never touched on it for the rest of the movie.
Yes. Here's the thing. The Moogai is a creature, and this is not a spoiler. This creature is supposedly a creature who steals kids. Okay, so that is, what is it, Eric? An allegory, a metaphor, or just the monster is symbolic of the government or a different culture, Australian culture.
Demon washing on actual historic event, maybe.
Okay. So
slavery didn't happen in America. It was monsters that did it.
It's trying to symbolism. They're couching this whole.
See, there's a difference between like symbolism would be something like in Sinners, where they take the vampires and it's a clear metaphor for something else, and it's very smartly done. With this, it's hey, here's that thing that happened, and don't worry, it wasn't actually this place that did it, the people that did it. It was really a monster that did it. It's not an allegory. It's replacing the villains with an actual monster and then throwing the blame. It's scapegoating the monster, fictional monster, instead of actually dealing with the event.
The real monster, yeah, which is the real event. Good point, Eric. That's a good point. But in the first act, and you have those two separate monsters in the first act, okay, which leads us to the rest of the movie. And Sarah, she starts, when she's on maternity leave, she starts seeing a creature, possibly not the Moogai, but a young girl with her eyes become white, or it might be a spirit. She sees some kind of supernatural presence invading her domicile.
Creepy children.
Yeah, babe. Which one? What do you say?
I think creepy children.
Creepy children. Yeah,
the worst of all horror.
Right. Creepy children in the house. As the narrative progresses, Sarah gets mentally unhinged, step by step. But the problem is there is also a lot of just things that happen within her life that a lot of people are not believing what she's going through. And then she's becoming very irritable. Bottom line is she has to protect her new baby and also her young daughter and her husband from this possible sinister spirit or creature, which is the Moogai. This movie is written and directed by John Bell. I will get into my very quick mini review and then hand it over to Eric Holmes. Again, the shining star in this movie was Srisavasdi's performance. I thought she was great. There was a slow burn. I didn't mind a lot of the stuff that Eric was talking about as just a generic, well-done thriller. I was enjoying it until the third act, which I felt it left a couple of big plot holes. There's one plot hole it left. And then also we have to mention that Sarah has a mother, Aboriginal mother, and she's in and out of the movie as well. I would have liked to have seen more of her and more of her culture spotlighted as well in the Moogai, not just as an answer to the creature elements, but more of just everything seems so. I know the third act is a race against time kind of situation, but I was not completely locked in by the third act. All that said, I was fine with the Moogai as a mild recommendation based on Srisavasdi's performance. I thought it was good, and the actual execution of 2/3 of the narrative, which was well done. I just wish it was a little bit better on the third act. I think there was a little bit of a dropping of the ball. That said, still a mild recommendation. 3 stars for me. Eric Holmes, your review of the Moogai.
Oh, 3 stars. That's generous.
Yeah.
This, I mentioned it earlier. This movie starts off with opening titles of the Aboriginal people would basically be whitewashed. They're basically describing ethnic cleansing of the area.
Right. No, not killing, but the cleansing is like they're taking the kids away from the area. Right.
Call it a soft genocide, if you will. But yeah, it just seemed with that opening title, it's like, whoa, okay, that's interesting. I'm not familiar with this story. Let's see what goes on there. And they opened up with it and go towards that period of time for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, something like that.
That was well executed. The first act was well done because you had a sense of mystery.
First act, that was like
the first 5 minutes. It was well done.
Yeah, it might be the first act, but like when you say first act, you're thinking like a big chunk. But then they almost
opening moments.
They almost immediately cut to 2025, and then we're following Sarah, which I wasn't a great fan of her character just in general.
She was irritable.
And then it just becomes a really not very great horror movie. You basically, okay, we Greg, we got steak night tonight going on. Now, if I say we got steak night coming out, you're pretty excited for steak, right? You're going to come out.
100%.
I got my fork, got my steak knife. I'm ready to go.
I'm ready to taste some meat, some really good meat from Eric Holmes.
If I put down a piece of warm bread in front of you, you're going to be a little disappointed, aren't you?
No, I'm going to say I like the warm bread. Where's the steak? You whetted my appetite for more. Yeah, you helped. It's like a sponge.
The steak was there. I just didn't give it to you. I gave you warm bread instead.
Okay.
They open when the movie starts off with titles, you think that's going to have something to do with a big chunk of what you're going to see going forward.
Okay.
They promise, not the trailer. Now, you watch the trailer or promise something that ultimately doesn't deliver. That's on marketing. This is the opening titles, the title card of the movie. That's the movie promising you this is what the movie's going to be. And it got me locked in. I'm ready to go. And then you don't even engage with that thing at all throughout the rest of the movie. You don't show any of it. I'm like, I'm here watching this atrocity that you brought up. I'm thinking we're watching like a serious movie or take on this thing that you movie brought up, told me about, prepared me for, and now you're just giving me like a half-assed creepy children demon monster movie.
How about Devil's Advocate, Eric? Devil's Advocate. What if someone says, "Oh, we were trying to leave things in abstraction"? When some people say, "Oh, we're trying to leave things," is that a cop out? You think the fact that they didn't, like you said, engage with the Moogai?
They didn't engage with it at all. Like it's barely touched on throughout the rest of the movie, but not very well, and not in any sort of interesting way. It's just
look. I will say this. This is
it's even without that opening bit, it's still not a great horror movie. So it's like one of those fast. Demon children aren't scary. The only thing this movie has going for it is when you finally get to see the Moogai. It's a little silly, but it's cool. Cool character design.
But I think I agree with you. It's almost a little too late because we wanted to engage in the world building behind the Moogai before that. So when
I wanted to engage in the initial idea or the initial thing the opening title card brought up, but the movie didn't even want to do that. Even the opening bits where they were back in that time, they didn't spend much time. They're like, "No, let's get out of here." I'm like, just cut all that out because you clearly don't want to do anything with that.
And Sarah's Aboriginal mother, she should have had the most interesting story out of the whole thing. She's the one who actually
had an interesting story in this.
No, but you know what I'm saying, because she witnessed the Moogai as a child. So that's where you bring all of that culture and world building and trying to connect those two monsters, like you said, the human monster at the beginning with those officials, and then the Moogai, the supernatural monster. That's not even, like you said, engaged, because we don't get to see much of Sarah's mother and what her backstory is too much. So,
I mean, that was probably a silver lining. Didn't care. Just, I like, if you're talking about a backstory in that, like the actual atrocity that went, like that would have been interesting. Her backstory is the atrocity was actually the Moogai and didn't really have.
I will also say
this was not a good movie.
I will also say this movie bit off a little bit more than it could chew, but if it actually stayed in the house and was more of a claustrophobic domicile, and I know you're not a big fan of the creepy children stuff, if it was just like that straight singular horror experience, I would have been fine. But the third act really, it went a little bit off the rails for me. That said, I'm still giving it a generous 3 stars. So you guys might find something in that I didn't. What?
First of all, I don't think this bit off more than it could chew. I think what it did is it filled its plate and didn't eat any of it.
Very good point. Okay.
But there's also stuff in this that doesn't make sense. Like early on, like Sarah, like her and her husband's in bed, and the kid comes to the door. Says, "Mom, can I sleep with you?" It's like, you can't be afraid of your own child. We know as the audience that things are not right, and we've seen a horror movie before, and this movie's definitely doesn't
She was
come out of left field or anything. It's pretty obvious, what things are going to happen, but the character doesn't know that. Like that, this does the thing where characters know stuff that the audience do, but that character shouldn't know those things.
I will say this: it was well shot. I liked the look of the guy. It was fine. Oh, you're like,
it was in focus. It looked good sometimes. Good for you. And it's literally the bare minimum of what a movie should do.
Okay, so that is the Moogai. Eric Holmes, what is your rating on the Moogai? I gave it 3 stars. So how about you?
I would go 1.5 stars on this.
Okay.
I think without that opening, the kind of, you know what this is. First time I had salt and vinegar chips. Got a big old handful of them. I was a kid, big old handful of them, shoved them in my mouth, but I thought they were sour cream and onion. As soon as I ate it, I was like,
Oh,
what?
bad memory.
Those
Yeah.
went bad.
Those were bad. So that
No.
is.
So that's why we're at a star and a half, because I thought I was going to eat salt, or I thought I was going to eat sour cream and onion chips, but this movie salt and vinegar chips. Unfortunately, even now I like salt and vinegar chips because I know what they are. I was able to ease into them.
Yeah.
I like salt and vinegar chips now, but even then, it's not a great salt and vinegar chip either.
Wow. All right. So that is the Moogai. That's 1.5 stars for Eric Holmes. I gave it 3 stars. Listen to Bruce Purkey's review and see what he gave the Moogai. It's in theaters May 9th from Samuel Goldwyn Films. So as a recap, the Moogai, 1.5 from Eric, 3 stars for me. Unit 234, I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. Absolute Dominion, Eric absolutely did not like this movie. 1 star from Eric Holmes.
That movie hurt me to watch.
Oh my goodness. And last but not least is David Mamet's new movie, Henry Johnson. Eric Holmes gave it 3.5 stars. Before we get out of here, you want to say something before we kick it over to Cinem-Attic?
I'm sorry, listeners. You should have watched. I guess you got The Room 234.
Yeah.
And Henry Johnson's not bad. Check that out. I think I don't know. It's not banger season right now.
Unit 234 was fine for me. And yeah, unfortunately, Eric, go back to sleep now. You need to rest because I got the doctor's appointment.
But I can't. I'm all jet. Got me all juiced up.
I know, Eric Holmes,
but
you had Sinners that you were going to review. We can't review Sinners, but here's the good news, Eric. Bruce has a spoilerific review at the end of this episode for all of our members. Also, for our Patreon members, please vote. For our Patreon and CinemAddicts members, please vote for movie for me, Eric, and Bruce to cover this month on Patreon. We are covering the year 2003. Patreon member Alex Clayton suggested the movies Windy City Heat and Time of the Wolf. Obviously, one of the other movies we're going to review this month is, what is that movie that I'm blanking on right now that I have to watch, that I still have not watched? Eric Holmes? No, the movie from 2003 that I have to watch. The one that Spike Lee directed, but not about Bong Joon-ho.
Oh, Old Boy.
Old Boy, yeah. So not Bong Joon-ho. Old Boy's Director Park did that. And so Old Boy, Windy City Heat, Time of the Wolf are currently our movie selections for 2003. Patreon members, please hit us up in the comments or email me for some movie recommendations.
I should have brought this up at the top of the show.
Yes, there it comes.
I was on Jason Kleberg's Force 5 podcast.
Cool.
Yeah, sorry. I got so depressed over Absolute Dominion.
No
the Moogai, I'm like, I know what show's coming up and this. There's your thing. I'm sorry that there's not any wonderful, great 5-star movies. Banger season is not with us. So maybe this week, maybe not the greatest movies to choose from.
Well,
however,
remember, Bruce has I know Catherine, the log lady. Who knows? That might be great. But sorry, Eric, go ahead.
All right, cool. But there might not be great movies this week to watch, but there is a great podcast to listen to, and that is Force 5 podcast. I'm on with Jason Kleber. We do top 5 we call it blank check directors. I will explain it on the podcast, but basically these are 5 directors that you want to just give a blank check to and let's see what you do.
That's very cool.
And I know, Greg, you talk a lot about that, like indie directors. What would happen if they had $100 million budget? But if you had $100 million budget, you got the studio telling you how to make the movie because that's a lot of money and they don't want to let you off the rails, even though that's what we hired you to do. So it doesn't make sense. This is the fictional version where we give you a blank check. Are you gonna micromanage what we do to protect your investment? We might not even make $1 off this movie, and we don't care. We just want to see what you can do.
Eric, is the episode out right now for Force 5?
It is. Yeah, it came out Monday.
Okay.
And I should have opened with that at the top, but I didn't.
No worries. We will put the link to Eric Holmes's. No worries. He's joining our buddy Jason Kleberg over at the Force 5 podcast, and I will leave a link for the blank check episode. And Kleberg is a really great researcher when it comes to podcasts and film history and film stuff and conversation.
You mentioned a couple of directors that we're fans of.
Oh, Brian De Palma, possibly. Oh, okay. My blank check. Oh, okay.
Yeah, might have mentioned old Matty Doe at some point.
I love that. So that's a little bit spoiler. If you want to listen to Eric's takes on who he would give or whom he would give the blank checks to, listen to Force 5 podcast this week, and I will leave a link on the show notes. For next week, for Cinematics episode 294, we are covering the movies Jane Austen Wrecked My Life. By the way, I did see that. Really good movie. That is, just look out for that. There's a movie, Eric, called A Breed Apart, which is a bunch of dogs attacking people on a remote island. I don't know if you're into that. It's called
I'm doing an interview for that tomorrow.
Okay, very good.
Is that with the lady from Fall in it?
Yes. Are you interviewing her tomorrow?
Yes.
Oh, what is her name? Grace Carolyn Curl? What is it?
Yeah.
Something. But
so
yeah, okay.
I will be watching that movie tonight and interviewing her tomorrow.
Very cool. Okay, so Eric, and I am almost finished with it. And then we also
go watch Fall. That movie's awesome.
Which one? Oh, Fall's so good. And yeah, oh my gosh. I will say this, there is a Fall-esque moment in A Breed Apart, which would be very cool. So something for you to look forward to, Eric Holmes. Finally, there's the other movies, Bound, Sister Midnight, Desert Dawn, and The Kiss. Yes, we do 5 or 6 movies every week, and that's why me, Eric Holmes, and Bruce Purkey, it's my fault. We just watch too many movies, and I apologize. Eric Holmes, sign us out before we get out. We go.
Yeah,
Bruce.
It's banger season's over, but got it. I got it. Got a strong feeling it's going to reignite next week. Yeah, stay tuned. We'll see what's up.
Right,
and go listen to Force 5 podcast.
All right, thank you guys so much for supporting me and Eric Holmes. And of course, here is Bruce Purkey over at the Cinem-Attic.
Welcome to the Cinem-Attic, the attic of cinema. Once again, I have crawled down from the attic into the main house where I can record in a little corner. Had to open up the hatch and use a little piece of a coin I found to unscrew the edges of the latch, but I made my way down. I have my ways. Anyway, we've got 3 screeners for you this week, and then a little bit of a spoiler discussion at the end. Movies that I'm going to be doing this week are Henry Johnson, David Mamet movie. I've got The Moogai from Australia, and I've also got I Know Catherine, the Log Lady. As well as that, I'm going to probably do a little spoiler discussion because everyone's already talked about the movie itself. A little spoiler discussion on the movie Sinners. All right, let's get into it. First off, I am going to discuss I Know Catherine, the Log Lady, directed by Richard Green, about Catherine Coulson. Now, this is a documentary about Catherine Coulson, the Log Lady from Twin Peaks. If you are aware of Twin Peaks, you probably have seen the Log Lady. If you're a fan of Twin Peaks, you've definitely seen the Log Lady, and you know who she is. But you still might be asking yourself, why is there a documentary, a nearly 2-hour documentary about Catherine Coulson? It doesn't seem like a big enough subject. And when I'm thinking about documentaries, I think things like a great documentary has fantastic access. You're inside of embedded with a war team, a war zone with a invading force or a defending force, and you're getting footage you'd never get any other way. Or maybe there's this really in-depth look at a historical event that maybe you weren't aware of. Like last year, they had a soundtrack to coup d'etat. I was like, I don't know anything about the Congo and the 60s and why that was of national and international importance. But hey, that documentary dove in and gave me a great perspective that I wouldn't have had otherwise. This movie would look like, oh, this is a puff piece love letter to a side character from Twin Peaks because David Lynch died recently, and you would be wrong. Now, an example of something that was, we had a documentary, I don't know, a year or 2 ago about Gene Wilder after he passed. And it was fine. I love Gene Wilder, but it was just basically a retrospective of his career, why he was great. We know why he was great, with a few bits of details in there that stuff I didn't know. On the other hand, I Know Catherine, the Log Lady, about Catherine Coulson. Now, this plays almost like a movie that gives you a reason to love and want to know more about all of these people that you just think are behind the scenes doing one thing or just a bit player in some famous thing. And they just have this giant full life that you have no idea about. He plays in that way, I think. And that's really cool. Like almost celebrating the greatness that is like represented time and time again throughout life. There's people that have very full and very impactful lives that we may just encounter at one moment and have no idea about the depths of that person's life. So Catherine Coulson, to me, plays out like that. Now, this does also act as a de facto Twin Peaks, David Lynch retrospective to some degree, mostly because of her role. So here's the thing. Similarly to a lot of other people that have acted throughout Kyle MacLachlan, people who have acted throughout his career, Lynch's is the his there, his career, he builds this group, this troupe of actors. Catherine Coulson, honestly, is one of those from the very beginning. She was early on involved with Eraserhead. She started with him in Eraserhead. She was the focus puller and kind of assistant camera person on Eraserhead, which of course was a huge, long process. And her first husband was Jack Nance. If you don't know who Jack Nance is, he's the dude with the crazy hair on the cover of Eraserhead that you've probably seen. Even if you haven't seen the movie, you've probably seen Jack Nance. And Jack Nance had a lot of parts throughout the career of David Lynch. In fact, Jack Nance's character, if you're watching Twin Peaks, he's the guy who goes out and finds Laura Palmer's body. So anyway, from the very beginning, she is involved in this stuff. And what this movie does is that organizing principle, I think, is really good as well. A real easy way to do a biography documentary, start early in their life, early in their career, and follow them chronologically. And this movie basically does that to a most degree, but it's always leading up to the fact that she is going to have this role reprising the log lady in Twin Peaks: The Return. If you've seen Twin Peaks: The Return, you know that when she filmed that, she was pretty much on death's door. I didn't know how close to death's door she was and how much it took for them to get those final moments. So you know you're leading towards that, and that kind of has a driving force. But in the middle of that, you're also watching her life and her career. And I also only want to tell you all the things that she's done in her life because I think it's fun to discover. She has definitely been involved in behind the scenes in a bunch of famous, iconic movies that you have no idea that probably, unless you're really a Catherine Coulson head, you have no idea that she was involved with. And I thought that was a great surprise. I also loved the fact that her friends and co-actors, a lot of them very famous, had tons of great stories to tell about her and things to show about her. And she says a bunch of stuff about herself too, because they have a bunch of archival footage, tons of it. And if you're a big fan of David Lynch, you get a ton of Twin Peaks and David Lynch stuff. And he's not just thrown in as archival pictures and maybe a clip here and there. They obviously had interviewed him about Catherine Coulson when he was still alive. And he loves her. He's very in depth on her. And he tells a couple great stories that are just absolutely quintessential David Lynch. And it really gets you a flavor of how close, like how incredibly close he was with her. So that's the thing. You go back and you look at Twin Peaks in general and you go, oh, there's this cool little quirky side character, the log lady. And you have no idea how integral the actor playing the log lady was to David Lynch and to his life and to movies. And you have no idea how long that character had been in existence in the mind of Catherine and David. So I think this is a hugely value-added documentary. I love this documentary. It's probably going to be in the running for one of my favorite documentaries of the year. I would say if you are a David Lynch fan, like a casual fan, because I'm in the middle, there are obviously super fans, like super hardcore, every detail and every secret mystery trying to be uncovered kind of people. There are people who just don't like Lynch at all because they just think he's a weirdo, not fun for them. There's people who have watched some David Lynch, enjoyed it. And there's people like me, I think I'm a moderate, which I've seen all the David Lynch. I really like him. I really love David Lynch as a character and as a human being and as a director and as an artistic force. So for me, this is just another piece of awesomeness. But I think if people is very casual, even if you don't like David Lynch at all, there is a humanity, which much like David Lynch himself there's a humanity here by just following this person's life and seeing how much of an impact they had on interpersonal relationships and on creativity and on art that just makes this a valuable and awesome documentary. So I'm going to go 5 stars. I'm going to go 5 stars. Could I cut things? Could I nitpick this, but I can't. to me, it feels like a full meal of a documentary, and it just gave me the same depth and emotion and kind of love of creativity that watching some of my David Lynch's works do, and watching The Return this year did for me. So I'm going to go 5 stars for I Know Catherine the Log Lady. So check it out. Okay, next up, we've got Henry Johnson, directed by David Mamet, written by David Mamet. This had to have been a play originally. This stars, let's see, who's the main guy here? Henry is Eben, I can't say his name, Jenig, I can't even say it. We have Jerry as Dominic Hoffman. You've got Mr. Barnes, played by Chris Bauer, and Jean is Sheila Booth. And this essentially is like a small play in 3 acts put on film. And the 3 acts are the main character, Henry Johnson. The first act, he's basically at a law firm that he works at. I've already forgotten this movie. Sorry, that gives you a clue. At a law firm that he works at, and he's trying to see if the head of the law firm will possibly think about bringing on this ex-con that Henry has been helping out. And the first act is essentially this long kind of, is almost more of a monologue by the law firm head to Henry, but there's questions and there's some dialogue back and forth. But basically it's this law firm guy pontificating about how this convict had essentially used and tricked and duped into getting him to recommend that he get this job. And there's a whole bunch of stuff in there about crime and guilt and male roles and people being dominated and tricked because of what they want to believe and who they want to be. And there's weird stuff about how Henry and this convict guy had been casual acquaintances in college, but it was because Henry was a beta, and this convict guy was a alpha, and that did Henry actually desire him? There's a lot of weird, to me it's very psychobabbly, and there's a lot of coded manoverse kind of stuff. And if you don't know what manoverse is, it's this very ultra bro, like very chauvinistic, very sexist, like we're reclaiming the caveman dude version of the world, and that's the version of reality that actually matters, and blah, blah, blah. I can't even explain it. It's just toxic BS. Anyway, this movie seems very coded to that toxic BS. And I would say Act 2 of the play is Sheila Booth he's basically a cellie for Henry, because Henry ends up in prison. Did I spoil it? No, I didn't, because this movie is just gobbledygook. And then you got a whole long, essentially a monologue of Celly, like explaining how the world works and why things work the way they do, and how you have to be in the world, and essentially trying to convince him to use his trying to convince Henry to use his, what would you say, possible attraction, possible connection with the prison psychiatrist woman to possibly get access to a gun. And then the final act, I won't tell you because there's a little bit of a reveal. The final act is Henry with a different person in the prison and leading to what they're doing. I'm going to tell you, this is not a secret. I did not like this movie very much. I feel like it felt to me like David Mamet, through these 3 different characters and these 3 different acts, just pontificating his philosophy of the world to us and trying to get us to understand his version of what reality is. And it felt very, like I said, this felt like it was coded in this version of masculinity's podcast world and just converting that to some sort of a play. It wasn't engaging for me. I hated all of the characters. I didn't care for what happened to any of them. When things happened to them, I was like, great. So don't care. It's also absolutely scans with kind of the way that LaBeouf has gone in the last 10 years or so, and how the way he's gone off the rails. It just feels like a project he'd want to just be plopped right down the middle of. And he's just there's something to me that's just fundamentally unlikable about him now. It seeps through. This is the way some actors, like, they can be playing all different kind of characters, but they have this like charisma or undeniable likability that somehow they can't escape. It's part of their persona, part of their actual being. That's the opposite with LaBeouf. He has a unmistakable terribleness just seeping from him, in my opinion, in my humble, tiny opinion here in my corner of the world. I know he's much more famous and has much more money, but he's also playing really weird and unsavory characters, in my opinion. Don't like it. No. What am I giving this thing? I was 2 stars. I can give more 2 stars. It's also just not interesting, and it's also just doesn't feel like time that's I should be spending with a movie. All right, last we have The Moogai, directed by John Bell. This takes place in Australia. The main character is Sarah, played by Sherry Sebens. And there's some other characters as well. I might get into them, but the main character is Sarah. And this starts. Now, I was wondering when I was thinking about Eric watching this movie, because I know he gets really annoyed by movies that'll start with something really action, like it'll start in the middle of the action, then go backwards, and then take an hour to get back to the action. This doesn't do that exactly, but it does something almost worse. It starts as a period piece in 1973, did I write down? 1970. And it presents an interesting fact and an interesting situation in the history of Australia. And that is from 1910, it even has a little caption thing that goes on the screen. And it says from 1910 to 1970 in Australia, they used to forcibly remove, the government of Australia used to forcibly remove, they say Aboriginal, you can say Indigenous, but I guess Aboriginal was, it may be still the official way to say it in Australia, Aboriginal children, and they'd forcibly take them away from their families and their homes and adopt them into white households. Essentially, similar things have been done with native indigenous groups in Americas, especially Canada and United States, to basically try to take the indigenous people out of society by assimilating them, having them just change and have to socially and become different people, lose their entire heritage, lose their kind of state of being and their identity by just pulling them out, dropping them into these worlds. They had the schools, specific schools, to teach the white church and to teach the white rules and teach white society to indigenous peoples in Americas. I say Americas because I know there's famously happened in Canada almost as much as the United States. Here, this is a similar idea, right? And we get this at the very beginning of the movie, and it says it takes place in 1970, which is right at the end of this era when they were still actively doing this. And then you see these white people pulling up and coming in, and the woman telling her kids to run and hide in the bush. They go running off, and they end up in a cave, and then you hear like a monstery kind of thing, and then flash forward to current day. And this is where you have Sarah. She's probably in her 30s. She's got 1 child. She's about to have another child. She's married to Fergus. Maine Wyatt is the actor. And then her actual mom, her birth mother, Ruth, played by Tessa Rowe, is coming back into her life. But Sarah's kind of annoyed by her birth mother because, of course, Sarah's been raised her whole life in this white world. So that obviously Sarah is one of these girls. You don't know if she's the girl you saw at the beginning, but she's one of these girls that essentially got taken, raised by a white family. Now she's reconnecting. It's kind of like adoption in a sense, but obviously forced adoption. Being raised now, she is trying to reconnect a little bit with her birth mother, but she also kind of gets really annoyed by her birth mother because her birth mother is really in touch with indigenous ways, in touch with what Sarah considers witchcraft, or she considers it like just gobbledygook. She doesn't buy into the old religion, the Aboriginal ancestral ways of things. She considers those just superstitions. And this whole idea is there's this idea of a thing called the Moogai, which is they even say in the thing it's like equivalent of a boogeyman, but it's known for coming and trying to steal someone's children. So the obvious connection between the actual history and this kind of mythical character, they kind of make sense thematically. But here is the problem. All of this sounds interesting, and it is interesting to start with. These are all some pretty great ingredients. But right out of the gate, I was very interested in the actual historical facts that were presented about them stealing these children and the effects that would have on society. But we don't stick with that. We immediately come forward to this kind of supernatural version of that thing happening. And I understand how that could work, how you could make it a metaphor, symbolic of the actual events. But the problem is the way they play it out is this movie is basically a tropey monster movie. We don't really learn much about the actual specific historical ways that this monster is supposed to work. I don't know the rules of the monster exactly, other than it seems like the birth mother is trying to do things to ward it off, trying to put symbols and paint things on the wall and trying to mark the children so the thing can't find them, the Moogai. And all that stuff, once again, is interesting. But really, the predominant thrust of this movie is Sarah, mom, feels like she's losing her mind and everyone's gaslighting her, but she thinks she's seeing this Moogai and evidence of this Moogai trying to attack and take her kid. The Moogai itself, you don't see much other than little bony hands, and there's lots of jump scares. There's lots of images of creepy kids with white eyes, which all that stuff is very tropey and played out. And all of it is very generic, which is really sad because like I said before, the ingredients are here for a really interesting and really unique and affecting movie. Once again, I think it could honestly be like a historical drama. I think it could be a really affecting historical drama be very horrific with just the real life actual events of them stealing these kids. I know I don't like to sit here and review by rewriting a movie, but they literally have the premise at the beginning of the movie for the movie that I want this to be. And then they just take a hard turn and say, nope, it's going to be about the spooky monster that you've seen versions of a million times. It's like you had all these ingredients, these great ingredients. Actors are good, situation's interesting, the ideas are interesting. You have all these ingredients to make a fantastic cake. And you take the ingredients and you say, I'm going to make a salad. I'm going to take all this sugar and I'm going to take this chocolate and this flour, all this stuff, and I'm going to make a salad. Like, why are you making a salad with all those ingredients? It's right there. You've got cake ingredients to make a cake and you're going to make salad? That's what we do here. We make salad. So it's like, that's kind of what this movie does. It makes salad out of cake mix. And I like salad okay, but it's not what I wanted when I had all those cake mix parts. So unfortunately, it's a small budget movie. They're really trying. It's very earnest, I think, in its attempts. So I can't hate it, but I can't really recommend it. So I'm going to go 2.5. I feel bad only giving it a half score higher than Henry Johnson, because Henry Johnson was terrible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 2.5 to the Moogai. And I'm going to go back and retroactively give Henry Johnson 1.5. 1.5 for Henry Johnson, and you're lucky to get it, buddy. Okay, last but not least, and this is going to be very spoilerific. This is going to be almost all spoilers. So if you haven't seen Sinners, right, by now you either probably aren't going to see it or you want to see it and you can just ignore this until after the fact. I waited almost 3 weeks to see Sinners because I just didn't have a gap in time to go check it out. I knew it was a longer movie. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes. But you must have heard about Sinners by now. This is definitely, quote, one of the overhyped. Is it overhyped? I would say no, but it's hyped for sure. Since Longlegs last year, which definitely was very divided for people, I loved it, but whatever. I don't think there's been a movie with as much hype as Sinners has now. So if you haven't seen it, heads up, spoilers. I think I've said it enough times. First of all, I love Sinners. I ended up, even with all the hype, it still met my expectations. And it's a movie that after the fact, every time I think about certain things or my mind wants to work over certain parts of it or think about stuff in it, I like it even more. That's always a sign to me of a really solid, a really great movie, is that it keeps working on you. That being said, it won't be for everybody. If you're looking to go in for a really cool, crazy vampire action movie, I told you it was going to be spoilers, so I already said that. So if you heard that and you're mad, it's on you. If you're looking for this just crazy action movie that just goes all out, then you're going to be disappointed because it probably first hour of this movie is not that at all. Anyway, I'm 5 stars in this movie, easy 5 stars. And I could get into the whole plot and everything. I don't think I'm going to do that here because everyone else has done that, other than to say it's an amazing feat that this movie works. And there's a few movies happen that are like that, where when you listen to it on paper, listen to the idea, or you read it on paper, you're like, there's no way that's going to work. That's a giant mess. You're not going to make a historical drama about 1930s Mississippi Black experience in America that's also a musical, that's also a vampire movie. But yeah, they did, and it all works, and it works really well. And it's funny, we were just talking about the Moogai. If you're thinking about Sinners, it kind of does something similar in that it could have just dealt with the idea of what it means to have identity and this idea of music being a very genuine version of creativity and of expression that is really owned and created straight out of the Black experience in America. And you could have said, we're going to just tell that story. And it could have been just that story and been great. But to use this metaphor of the vampirism as part of that could have failed just in kind of the same ways it didn't really work in the Moogai, or it didn't help add to it. Here, it just adds just an interesting element all the way throughout. So what do we want to talk about in spoilers for Sinners? The thing I wanted to focus on the most, because there's a lot of stuff in here. You can really go into details, societal details, historical details, because this is a pretty spot-on movie, and there's a lot there. But what I kind of wanted to get into was the villain in this movie, and the portrayal of vampires in this movie is one of the reasons I think it works so well. Because when the turn happens, so first of all, I didn't mention the amazing cast in this movie. When Miles Catton, who plays Sam, plays his blues song at the juke joint, and we have this long oneer where essentially you see the power of music, which is described at the beginning of the movie. You see the power of music and how it can essentially draw forth almost a portal into the history and to a spiritual realm. And you see the melding of all these different future versions of music that have been birthed out of the blues, Delta blues in this case. And once that happens and he opens this portal and draws forth the evil as well, which of course is the vampires, we are wondering, well, why vampires? And at that point I was thinking, this is just going to become kind of a basic movie at this point. It's going to become this basic vampire fighting movie. And you're going to lose all of these interesting subtexts, all these interesting thematic elements that were going on here. And for a bit, I thought that was happening. And I was like, okay, this is a fantastic movie. Now it's an okay movie. And I've heard that reaction from a lot of people. Like, it was great, but then it became just okay when the vampires came. But I tend to disagree, because as the vampire segment of this movie progresses, what the vampires represent and how they play into this world is really integral and almost key to understanding the basic theme of this movie. And that is the vampires themselves, and this is weird, it's not exactly right, but the vampires themselves are not the evil. They're not the enemies. Sure, physically they're the enemies as far as your life, but it's the vampirism that's the enemies. And you're still like, Bruce, what are you talking about? You're talking out of both sides of your face. That makes no sense. What do you mean the vampires aren't the enemy, but the vampirism is the enemy? Vampirism in this story, in this movie, I think is actually taking the place of, how do I want to describe it? Appropriation, assimilation. It's those things where it could be like the vampires in here could almost be like the record industry, where the representative, Remick, the vampire, is someone else who had been basically victimized by this same force. He had already been assimilated into this world of vampirism where he's essentially seduced into this eternal life, this damnation, where he doesn't actually have his identity quite anymore. He's not the Irish person that he always was. Now he's this creature that's Irish, but he is thirsting for knowledge and memories and history and identity. And that's why he's trying to get others to be pulled into his orbit. There's this moment where he's standing at the threshold and he's explaining to them, hey, we're not going to judge you. We're not going to be racist towards you like the people around you, like these KKK guys around you. You come and be with us. You're going to have power. You're not going to die. We're not going to judge you. We're going to accept you. You become part of us. We're going to be this whole group together. It's very enticing. And also, like traditionally with vampires, always been very seductive. It's always been seductive on this kind of sensual level, forbidden lust, all this kind of stuff being coded. Well, here, they're really interesting. The seduction is the seduction to give up your freedom and your identity for this illusion of community and power that he would have as part of this vampire group where, hey, you can't be killed as easily. You have all this power over others, but to do it, to be that vampire, you have to kill other people and basically take their identity and take their freedom. You see what I'm getting at? You see why that is so powerful in the kind of the metaphor of the Black experience. Once again, the role of music in here was so key because if there's any time you can watch in historically how, especially in Black America, how music has always been a driving force and always been a true voice. And it's almost always been co-opted, assimilated, stolen, transformed, taken, and turned into something else. Famously, rock and roll. Famously, you have a hound dog turned into an Elvis song. You've got all these kind of things where, the true versions of it were turned commercialized and co-opted into a culture that wasn't where the origin came from. And that's why in this movie, it's so key to understand that vampirism is like that. It's like to say assimilation. It's to say acceptance in a sense. It's to say being trapped in something different. You could be trapped in that juke joint, knowing that it's surrounded by vampires that can basically rip your throat out and kill you, but you can still be free in a sense in your own world. Or you can open the threshold and let them come in and kill you and become part of the vampire world and not be free. And that is accentuated in the very last mid-credit scene where you've got Sam, now an older man played by Buddy Guy, amazing moment. And then you've got the Michael B. Jordan character who had been vampirized. And you have, was it Annie? I think it was Sally. I forget I wrote down her name. I don't think I wrote down her name. Haley Steinfeld's character. Those two come in and they've been vampires all these years, 90, 80, 70 years, whatever it is. I think it's 70 years. And they come in and they find Sam there at the end of his life. And they're like, once again, hey, Sam, you're about to die. You can still be us. You can still be powerful. You can still be, and you're like, he's no way. And he says, remember that night? And talking about the juke joint before the vampire showed up. He says, remember that night? That was the freest, most amazing night I ever had. And the two vampires have to agree because it was the most free and amazing moments they ever had before they became vampires. And that's how this movie works. I think that's why at its core, it's this really cool look at all that stuff in the middle of stew of just entertaining as hell movie making. And it's, like I said, a musical with great music, all this stuff, but it just works at that really interesting level. One last little thing, and I know it's getting a little more muddled. I didn't write down a giant diatribe on this, so I'm sure you can deep dive on this and do your own kind of take on all the stuff that's happening here. But I love how they have all of the tropes of vampirism that you'd expect. You've got light killing, and you've got stakes, wooden stakes, garlic, you've got all this stuff. The one thing, though, that they play with the most in the vampire kind of tropes is having to be invited in and crossing the threshold. And that's something that's in a lot of vampire movies and a lot of vampire stories, but it's very rarely like the central impediment for the vampire. And in this movie, it becomes that. And once again, I think that's intentional because you get all these scenes where you've got whichever vampire on one side of the doorway and you've got our main characters on the other side of the doorway. And it's very, very consciously saying, this is our place. This is where we get to be 100% who we are. And you are not invited. And then on the other side, they're like, let us in, let us be part of this. And once they do that, once you let them be part of it, it's going to be fully defiled, fully lost, fully dangerous, fully broken. And that's, once again, thematically, the thrust of the story. So good. I could go into all these moments in here that just work with that. There's a whole bunch of stuff about religion. As far as that goes, religion as another form of assimilation. You aren't truly yourself. You are basically sucked into a philosophy and a world that isn't really part of yours. It's now accepted as part of yours, but when you actually get taken into it, you're not fully it. And there's a whole part in there in the movie about that being accepted. But once again, fantastic movie. Hopefully, if you've seen it, this kind of gives you a perspective that you might think about or push back on. I'd like to hear what everyone else thinks too. I think you could look at this a whole bunch of different ways, this movie, but I think at its core, the reason the vampirism works is because of what I said and how it's dealing with that idea of freedom and true art being expressed by the artist versus having to be co-opted and assimilated into a whatever kind of version you want to say of your art, where your art is now someone else's. It's not all fully yours. It's fantastic. Check out the soundtrack if you haven't done it. I love that as well. I really kind of want to go back and see this movie again. I haven't had a movie I'd want to go back and see in the theater for a while, and I don't know if I'll have time, but it's definitely a movie I'll watch again when it's out on physical media. Anyway, that was my little spoiler mini rant on Sinners. Once again, for the screeners I had this week, the pick of the litter easily was I Know Catherine the Log Lady. Thanks, guys. We'll see you again next week with some new whole batch of movies.